Hidden Gems, Episode 3, Mining Dr. Knizia's Vast Game Library. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Cameron. Thanks for listening to our show.
Welcome back.
Guys, I feel like a German vacation today. Wouldn't that be nice?
Why do you feel like a German vacation?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at a Tom Collins glass filled with a beautiful looking beverage.
Yes,
right
you
now.
are. Cocktail of the day.
To me, it's just screaming the words German vacation.
Well, that's because it is a German vacation.
Tell us what's in it.
In honor of Dr. Knizia today and reviewing some of his games, the featured cocktail is German Vacation. I'll be totally honest. I had a hard time with this one because I wasn't really sure. I was like, what would be good for a German cocktail? So then I started
beer.
Well, beer, right? That's not beer. And Jägermeister kept coming up, which you have to be careful with Jägermeister because it's not always like the classiest of liqueurs.
Yeah.
Some of the drinks that you make with Jägermeister I would not feature on this podcast, okay? It was either this or a Jaeger bomb, okay? So I went with German Vacation. And I have to say it's pretty tasty. It's in addition to Jägermeister, it has rum and some other things, ginger liqueur. So it's got kind of like a beachy kind of poolside drink feel to it, I think, at least.
Some bitters in there.
Some bitters.
It's a little bit more robust than your average poolside drink.
For sure. Well, I mean, for the reputation it has, Jägermeister is actually, I think, a pretty complex liqueur. It's got like 40 different herbs in it.
Wow,
it's very earthy, herby, a little sweet, but I do like it.
Yeah.
So, German Vacation for today.
Cool. Well, so as we've been alluding to on the past few episodes, if you've been tuning in, today we're going to talk a little bit about our mining efforts.
Yes.
So,
digging deep on BGG.
Yeah. When I learned about the idea for this podcast, I was like, Chris knows about a lot of great games. I want to know about a lot of great games too. So, because
you saved yourself like 600 hours of listening to other people's podcasts.
Exactly.
More than that, I'll guarantee
probably.
you.
And instead traded that for hours and hours of combing through the Board Game Geek database. So when I heard about this, because I'm a computer programmer, and Cameron, you can relate, I was like, how can I figure out how to go through the Board Game Geek database, find some of these games that nobody else knows about? And so I spent some time, and I wrote a short script in Python for anybody out there who knows coding and cares that will screen scrape and pull data from the Board Game Geek website, and it spits it out into a spreadsheet, and then I can filter that spreadsheet and try to identify some of these hidden gems. So up to this date, and we'll provide updates along the way as we go about what number I'm on.
Yeah, where are you at now?
So we're at 45,000.
Oh my word,
Oh, man.
There are 330 plus thousand entries in the Board Game Geek database as of the last time I checked. That could be off at this point.
We're sifting, basically.
Yeah, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
It's going a lot faster now that we have our script in place in our spreadsheet than it was before manually. So yeah, that's my nerdy contribution to the podcast.
Of course, it made a bit of an improvement when we realized after writing your awesome script that basically scrapes page to page, just advancing one URL after the next, to realize like, oh, they actually do have like an XML-based API.
They do, and if I just pounded their database with 45,000 calls, we would get blocked pretty quickly. I'm sure.
Who is this person?
So this is allowing us a little bit of leeway there.
So how are you even evaluating 45,000 games? Like, what does that look like? How are you able to even look at that many and know which ones to focus on and which ones you can just gloss over? Because that number is staggering to me, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've come up with a couple parameters that we can kind of weed out some of the chaff, right?
Okay.
I eliminate anything that's below a 5 rating.
What's the overall scale of the ratings on BGG for folks that might not know?
Yeah, so it goes from 0 to 10. It's a pretty complex algorithm from what I understand.
Okay. It's not exactly straightforward, yeah.
And
It's based on ratings, number of ratings,
Right.
a whole series of
I see.
criteria that
Okay.
factor
It's not
into that
just
rating.
rating number.
And
yeah.
it's not just something that BGG sort of arbitrarily puts on games. It's based on user input to some
Based on
degree.
user input,
Okay.
yep. So they've refined that algorithm over time from what I understand about it. And it's pretty accurate, but it's complex.
Okay. So nothing below a 5.
Nothing below a 5. Nothing that has less than 10 or 15 ratings total.
It could be good.
It could be good. I'm
it's kinda
sure
like
that
when
there are. I'm sure that there are games that I'm missing, but up to this point, even just based on your feedback, Chris, and of the games that I've pulled out, I think we're hitting some good ones.
Oh, for sure.
It's like when you're buying something on Amazon and you're looking at this thing and you're like, which one of these 2 or 3 things should I buy? They all look very similar. And like one of them has like 17 reviews. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
not that one.
Right,
I want the
right,
one
right,
that's
right.
been bought like 4,000 times.
Yep.
That's got to be the good one.
And to be honest, at this point, only being as far through it as we are, we have 400 plus games that we've
Yeah.
already identified. So we already have a spreadsheet of shame that we're never going to get
Oh
through.
my. Yeah. If we ever do turn out to be successful, we're never going to run out of games. There's just so many games, and there are so many that are worthy for this podcast.
We at least have
honestly.
to try. Yeah.
When Jason provides me with the raw data in the Excel spreadsheet, I would say probably 50 to 60% of them I've heard.
Okay.
Or sometimes I'll be reminded, well, actually, he brought a game in tonight, Monastery, and I was like, I don't know that game. And then I saw the cover. I was like, oh, yeah, I do know that, actually. But it kind of jogs my memory on some games. But we kind of put them in the queue, and they might never come up, but, some certainly will.
So was that all the parameters that we sort of used to filter?
The only other parameter I'm using is, and we talked about this, I think, in the last episode, is I'm ruling out anything that's ranked below 1,000.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean that we will never talk about games that are below 1,000, because there are some that, like Strasbourg,
Right, just barely.
is a hidden gem, right?
Yeah.
But for my purposes and my scanning, because I figure Chris knows about any of those that fall in that top 1,000, I'm excluding those.
And to be clear, like why we do that, we're saying this game, if it has a rank below 1,000, it's probably either too well known
Right.
or too well
Exactly.
for our purposes.
Most
Okay.
likely.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's
All right.
my nerdy contribution.
I was getting ready to say, keep mining away, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just keep listening to podcasts.
We'll give an update on where we are in a future episode.
Yeah. When you get to the full 350,000, that's going to be like a huge achievement. That's like coding the human genome, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have like a celebratory
The board
episode.
game genome.
The board
Yeah.
game genome, that's right.
So I'm pretty excited in this episode. We're gonna focus on a designer that we really like, and Reiner Knizia.
Yes. Yeah, so one of the greats of board game design, if you're new to board games and you're listening to this podcast, I'm excited you're going to get to learn about Reiner Knizia today. If you're in board games, you know who Reiner Knizia is. If there were a Mount Rushmore of board game designers, he would be on it. He would have to be.
So many of the games that I've gone through so far are by Reiner Knizia.
And there's a reason
There's
for
so
that.
many.
Because Reiner Knizia has over 700 credited designs.
Wow,
700. Now,
that's amazing.
a lot of those are crap. I mean, honestly, like I'll run through some that are like in the 15 and 20,000s. Like it's just not good, right? But he has got,
But it's a published game.
it's a published game.
That's
and
remarkable.
You got to
Either way.
respect that. Yeah, the guy's just a machine. And I'll go into a little bit of, I'm going to give a little bio on him if you're
Okay.
interested. I think even gamers might like to hear
Yeah.
some of this if they don't
Love it.
know more about him. But just to review, Reiner Knizia has 13 games in the BGG top 500.
Wow.
That's phenomenal.
An incredible ratio.
Yeah, and several in the top 200. So just a few. Tigris and Euphrates, which we're maybe going to lose half of our 10 listeners right now. I've never played Tigris and Euphrates. It is on my shelf, okay? It is like shelf of shame for me.
Under the
It's
shelf of shame.
shameful.
Great game.
You played it?
I have. Tricky.
When?
I've played it online.
Okay.
Which is,
I was going to
you
say
know-
you never played it with me.
I haven't played it with you. I
Okay.
have played it, and it's quite difficult, I will
Yeah.
say, but it's a great game.
It's
We'll
his
have to
highest rated game.
We'll have to circle back after this episode and be like, guys, we played Tigris and Euphrates.
Finally,
Here's
yeah.
our 5-second review because that's not what this podcast is about.
That's right. This game does not qualify, but it's his highest rated game. It's a classic. Quest for El Dorado might be his most well-known game in modern game terms. It's really taken on. I kind of think it's kind of meh personally, but
My kids love that game. It's my kids' favorite game.
yeah, I understand why people like it. It's just not for me. Raw. Awesome.
Great game.
Second favorite auction game now because Strasbourg. Samurai, Modern Art, Amun-Re, Lost Cities, Through the Desert, Medici.
My favorite auction game.
Yeah, I knew it was. High Society. Man, just game after game after game from this guy. So he's awesome. All right. So a little bit of background about Reiner Knizia. So he's a German board game designer. We mentioned that already. He currently lives in England. He's lived in England for many years. So the reason why we call him Dr. Knizia is Reiner Knizia has a PhD in mathematics, interestingly. But before he went into full-time board game design, he actually worked as a banker in a mortgage company where he managed 300 people. It was a $2 billion company. Okay? So I think that probably explains, I'm speculating, why he was able to go into board game design full time, as I suspect he probably had a good bit of money saved up.
Oh, okay.
And he said that he got to a point in his career where he reached the point where he just wanted to do what he loved and not do things to make money. Yeah. And so
That's a great way to view like work. Honestly, that's kind of how I've been thinking about it.
I kind of admired it, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's like if the rat race can end for you, why wouldn't you end it?
He chose to get out. He was like, I want to spend my days doing what I like and maybe make less money, although he probably does really well in board games, but probably not as much as he did as a banker. But he made that decision. So as a designer, he says that he designed his first game when he was 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So he just kind of had that mind.
It's like a lifelong commitment to just designing games, I guess.
Yep. It's just always been a part of his life. His first serious published design, see I wrote it down here, was in 1990. Well, his first published design was 1990. 2 games, Gold Diggers and Desperados, which are not highly rated games, but published games nonetheless. And then from there, it just took off for him. And that's when the auction trilogy came out with Medici and Modern Art and Raw, and it just kind of went from there. In 1997, he decided to go into full-time game design, and he has been doing that ever since.
Wow.
So, a day in the life of Reiner Knizia. Okay, this is what his day looks like. He gets up at 4 a.m., he jogs with his wife, and then he has an office at home where he says he locks himself in this room, and he just designs games all day.
Wow.
That's what he does.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Sounds like a great day to me.
Yeah. He just sits in there in his desk, and he just comes up with game designs. In his office, he has 80 drawers. Each drawer is dedicated to a particular design.
Wow.
On the handles of each door, he has a colored tag. It's like color-coded.
Okay.
That will tell him where that prototype is in the design stage. And he will pull them out at random times and just begin to work on them. 80
Does he
at one time.
play test games along the way by himself, or
so he has a
teams
team
involved? Okay,
he has a team. But this is another thing that's really interesting about him that I learned as I was studying him. And this guy fascinates me. He does not play modern games.
What?
I would say he's probably never played Terraforming Mars or anything like that. He says he doesn't play games. He knows about them. He keeps up with news. But he doesn't play designs very often because he says he feels like it might influence his design too much, and he wants to remain creative.
Original, yeah.
An original.
Okay.
So while he knows what a deck builder is and stuff like that, obviously he made Quest for El Dorado. He was familiar with Dominion, but he doesn't play games. He plays his prototypes, and that's pretty much it.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, like, on the one hand, I kind of admire that. On the other hand, like, I kind of, like, I don't know. I kind of feel bad for him. Like, I kind of feel like maybe he's missing out on quite a lot of fun that he could be having in the broader world of games. But I guess if you're a designer, you have maybe set limitations in order to sort of not be influenced.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a wise choice for him for the work that he does.
Yeah, that's how he does it. Yeah, it's bizarre. I would think you would need to play current games just to kind of know what's happening. But like I said, he seems to keep up in news, so that's how he does it. So that's all the info on his job. One fun fact, I just thought it would be fun to share because I found it in my research. So I thought it was funny. So he collects something. He collects airline spoons. Do you know what this? Have you heard of this?
No.
I think this is like an older thing because I think airlines have moved to like plasticware now mostly. But apparently, maybe it's a first class thing. I don't know. But they give you silverware, like actual silverware, and he would steal the spoons off of airlines because each spoon is unique. Each airline has its own design, and it has like a design because they send these dirty spoons to this like cleaner. All of them do. And so the design tells them who to send the spoons back to. So he's got like 300 airline spoons that he's taken. He actually used to steal them, and then he started to feel bad, so he just asked if he could take them. And the what are they called? The people, the
flight attendants. Oh, okay.
Would just be like, yeah, just take them. I think a lot a lot of people do it actually, but
I've never heard of it.
Weird to me, yeah.
Never heard of it.
Go figure.
Where does he put it? Probably in maybe he's got another room full of drawers.
I think he displays them.
You go to Reiner Knizia's house, he's just got drawers everywhere for all
airline
his
spoons,
unique things that he stores. Wow.
So yeah, that's my research on Knizia.
So I guess ultimately what you're saying is, he hasn't done much with his life.
No. Sits in the room, designs games, and steals airline spoons. The mind of a genius. Cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about Reiner Knizia himself. Let's talk about some of his games.
Let's do it.
On safari in Africa, you might be able to spot lions, rhinos, elephants, leopards, and zebras. In this game, you'll spot them for sure, but can you guess which ones will be worth the most at the end of the safari? Play the right cards at the right time, collect the best animals, score the most points, and win the game. Wildlife Safari has easy and quick rules. It's fast to learn, and yet challenging to play. For all family members, young and old.
Nice.
Good job, Cameron.
Thanks.
Wildlife Safari, also known as Botswana, which you will often see this game listed as. But if you've been in the hobby for a while, you might also know this game as Loco or Quandary. And I think Quandary is actually a really fitting name for this game, but it is one of the more historical names of this game. Published in 1994, most recently by Eagle Gryphon Games. Currently ranked 1,601 on the BGG rankings. So when I first got into the board game hobby, I did hear about this game with some frequency. Like I said, this was around 2012. On the Dice Tower, Tom Vassell would talk about this game occasionally, but in the last 5 to 6 years, I have not heard people talk about it. It's just because it's an older design. Like I said, it was first published in 1994. This is an older game, okay? So rule summary. This will be fast. This is not a very complicated game, okay? This is definitely a filler game. So the way that Wildlife Safari works is you're going to have 5 piles of animals. And these aren't cardboard chits. These are plastic animals, okay? 5 in each pile. So you've got like cheetahs and elephants and rhinoceroses and things like that.
Rhinoceri?
Rhinoceroses. So in addition to the piles of animals, you're also going to have a hand of cards. Depending on the number of players, it could be like anywhere from 5 to 7 cards. And the type of cards you have match these animal types. So if you've got a pile of elephants, you've also got elephant cards. The values on these cards range from 0 to 5. So the way this works is, on your turn, you're going to look at your hand of animal cards and you're going to play a card to the table. So let's say I play the 2 of cheetah. What that means now is that cheetahs, if you own a cheetah plastic figure...
Sorry, I'm just getting tickled because it said... A 2 of cheetah, like
a 2 of cheetah, but like a trick-taking game.
Yeah. 2 of rhinoceros.
I play the 2 of cheetah. Yeah. If you play the 2 of cheetah, cheetahs are now worth 2 points. So every plastic cheetah figure is worth 2. Now let's say it goes to the next person. Oh, wait, let me back up. When you play the card, you also grab a plastic animal from one of the 5 piles. It does not have to be cheetahs. Just because you play that card doesn't mean you have to take that kind of animal. You can take any animal you want, and that's important. So when it goes to the next person, let's say they play the 4 of elephants. Now, elephants are worth 4, and they can take an animal. But let's say they also played a cheetah card. Let's say they played the 3 of cheetah on top of the 2. Now, cheetahs are worth 3, not 5. You don't add them together. The animal is always worth as many points as whatever the most recently played card is. So the game will go around like that, around and around with people playing cards and taking animals until one of the 5 piles has all 6 cards in it. Once all 6 cards are played to a type, that immediately ends the game, or the round. You'll play a number of rounds equal to the number of players. You'll then take your collected animals, you'll total up how many points they're worth, you'll record that, and then after the set number of rounds, whoever has the highest number of points wins the game. And that's how you play Wildlife Safari.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So, we'll start with the pros as we always do. Jason, what do you think? Pros for Wildlife Safari?
Yeah, this is a filler, obviously. We mentioned
sure.
that. It's super easy to teach.
Oh,
I think that's one of its benefits. It takes less than 5 minutes to teach this game.
2 minutes.
Anybody can pick it up. It drew a lot of similarities for me to Curios, which we talked about in the first episode. There's a lot of similarities going on. I'll talk a little bit more later about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, there's a lot of good decisions to be made in terms of when do I play a particular card, right? If I have that 5, when do I play it? Right? Because if I play it, somebody could immediately play a 0 right after me, and now my 5 has gone to waste. Same with the zeros, right? The cards in between also have the same decisions, but those ones on either end definitely have to be careful about them when you play them, and I think that adds some attention to things.
For sure.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the hidden knowledge fact, like you said, similarities to Curious, but this whole thing of like you get cards at the beginning of the game, you know something that other people don't. I think I enjoy trying to carve out like a strategy. Am I going to try to tank this thing and then drive it back up at the end of the game so that as I grab these, later after getting them for really cheap, they're worth more? Or am I going to get something else and then basically try to influence other people to pick up certain animals and then drop my 0 at the very end?
Yeah, Cameron, I really agree with your point. I want to echo what you say because I agree with it so strongly. I do feel like when you look at your hand, there's good strategic decisions, but then as the game progresses, there's also tactical decisions. I've had many games of this where I've played, and I'm like, I'm going to tank this, and then a few cards get played, and I'm like, I'm going to score this.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you have to be flexible in that way, but at the same time, you can look at your hand and make plans.
Yeah.
You just have to be fluid, and that's okay.
Especially if you see other people picking that animal up, and you're just like,
Yep.
You don't even know, but
I'm going to trash
I'm about to
this.
wreck you.
Yeah. One more pro for me before we move on. I just have to talk about the plastic pieces. For a filler game, if a filler can be overproduced, I guess you could make an argument that this one is. I mean, this could easily be cardboard chits.
Yeah.
And it would serve the same purpose. The fact that they're plastic animals is unnecessary. But I've never played a game of this with grown adult men and women, okay, who cannot resist the urge to line these animals up in like these herds, or they stack them on top of each other. These are like the kind of animals that you buy like when you go to like the zoo with your kids.
Or molded plastic, guys.
Molded plastic, and they're like these animals that you see like in the zoo gift shop that like you wish your kids wouldn't buy, but they do. They're that. They're just basic safari animals.
I am curious one thing about this. So obviously this game has seen a lot of different names. Did it ever have different designs?
I believe that it did. So
They weren't always animals.
I haven't played any of the other editions, but this one is definitely the best looking of all the different games.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it makes me wonder, like, would people be as interested in playing with a different type of plastic molded little guy?
I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't enjoy the game as much if it didn't have the plastic animals in it.
Yeah.
I think it just helps it.
Yeah,
I really do.
definitely.
It's so unnecessary, but I like the fact that they're in there.
Yeah.
So, Jason, let's move on to cons. What do you think? What do you not like about the game?
I would say for me, the biggest con to this game, I think, was it never felt like I had a reasonable amount of control. You can definitely use the cards that are in your hand to your advantage or not, but you're left in a position of knowing that you're always going to be trumped or always have the potential to be trumped, regardless of which way you're trying to influence the value of something. So it becomes a timing game, but the game can also end so abruptly.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because especially if you're playing with a higher player count, I could play a card and then it could go boom, 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 and the game's over, or the round is over, rather. So to me, the amount of control that you have in this game just didn't match up to the level of control that I feel like you have in a game like Curios, which is similar length, similar rules, explanation time. But yeah, I struggled with that. There are definitely decisions to be made for sure. I'm not going to doubt that. But it still seemed a little chaotic to me.
So I would rebut that by just saying, if you're playing a 4-player game, you're going to have 4 rounds of cards. Okay. In some ways, to me, the game does become a little bit like Curios, because then at that point my thought process is, well, I can't really tank anything and I'm not quite sure what I'm going to go for, but what is everybody else going for? right? Because in a lot of games, this feels like a stock game. You know, like if people seem like they're investing in an animal, I'm going to invest in it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure what it's going to be, or at least I can't control what it's going to be, but everybody else seems to feel good about it, so I'm going to take it to cut into their margin. You know what I mean?
Well, and not even that, but as a mitigation factor.
Exactly.
If it's widely spread, then why would someone drop, the tank it card on it if they're invested in it? Like that's just not going to happen. So you can hedge your result by going, well, if everyone has 2 rhinoceros, then probably not going to be worth nothing.
Yeah. If you see somebody take 3 of something, if they manage to, and you didn't get in on it, then that's just your fault, right? Like, especially if it scores highly, you just can't let that happen.
The limitation there, though, is if somebody takes 3 of something, there are only 5, right?
But that's 3 times around, right?
There are only 5 of each thing. So either it's going to be spread pretty evenly where it's like everyone has 1, maybe one person has 2, or it's going to be like split 3-2. So it seems like it kind of balances out a little bit where, you can definitely watch what other people are doing, but your ability to react to that is limited because by the time you're reacting to it, the pile's gone and there are no more rhinoceri left in the
I guess. I see what you're saying. I guess I just didn't see it that way. I don't know. I felt like there were a couple times I was like, Ben's got 2 of those. I need one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I didn't feel like I had a good path myself, just try to cut into that, that potential benefit.
Yeah. I had one con, really minor, if I'm honest, and it has to do with the theme. Don't understand the connection between seeing animals and them being valuable.
Yeah, there is no theme.
and I actually have that written down. It could honestly have been anything. I was trying to think, okay, well, if I'm going to be critical of it, I should probably at least be able to suggest something that would be better. And I was like, what if it was like a zookeeping thing? And you're, a competitive, zookeeper, and you're in charge of like allocating what animals are going to be like the most desirable for, people as an attraction to your thing. And I was like, honestly, this really doesn't matter because this game doesn't really even need to have a theme, but I like for there to be this connection between.
So you're saying you're going to put the lions in the same pen as the zebras?
No, it's more just like which animals do I want at my zoo?
Okay.
Like I need to have
pens.
these. People are like, oh, why would I go to your zoo? You don't have a lion. That sort of thing.
I got you. All right.
So let's talk about overall impressions.
Yeah.
Jason, you got an overall impression?
I do. I've come back to this a couple times as we've been talking about it. I think maybe it's just because we reviewed it so recently, but there's no way for me to review this without comparing it to Curios.
Yeah, I agree.
I really enjoyed Curios. I thought it was a great game. This game to me, compared to that, was just a 3. Wow. I gave it a meh. I don't think it's a bad game. I don't think it's a broken game, but it's not one that I would gravitate towards playing. I think the chaos with the cards just lends to frustration, in my opinion, right? Obviously, my opinion varies from Chris's, at least, but that's okay, right? I think for me, the chaos just overtook the fun factor for me.
Yeah, we are going to see this one a little bit differently, and that's okay. I see what Jason is saying, and this game does. It's funny you should say it because I thought the same thing. This game does remind me of Curios in certain ways, given they're both fillers, and I do get a similar feel from both of them. Having said that, I gave Curios a 5. I think it's a great filler. I also think this is a great filler. I didn't feel frustrated by this game. I get what Jason is saying, but I didn't feel like I experienced that a lot. I felt like most of the time I had some control, or at least had some ways to mitigate it if I didn't. This is also a 5 for me.
Oh, yeah.
I think these are 2 really good filler games. If you had me to choose, I would choose Curios over Wildlife Safari. I think Curios is a little better. That doesn't mean they both can't be 5s. But if I'm going to go grab for a filler, these are 2 that I would think of because they're super quick to play and they have good decisions. And one other thing I want to say about them too is, and we didn't mention this in Curios, but I want to take just a moment here because I think it's worth mentioning. These 2 games, Curios and Wildlife Safari, are great family games. They're great for kids, very simple to teach, very simple to understand, but with good depth of play. I think a lot of times parents don't play games with their kids as much because kids' games generally just suck. Like Candyland is not a game. You're literally flipping over a card and doing what it says. There's no choice in Candyland. So, like, most parents are like, well, I want to have fun with my kids, but Candyland sucks. You know, I don't want to play
with my kid.
Or Hi-Ho Cheerio. There's no choices. This is a game, and Curios, even though I know we're reviewing Wildlife Safari, but I'll mention them both. These are games that you could play and buy for your kids, even young kids, and play with them. And you would have fun and they would have fun. And so for those reasons, 5 for me. I like it.
No need to build it up for me. I think this is a good game. I feel a little bit compelled to just make a declaration of how I feel like it shapes up to Curios. And honestly, I really don't have a great opinion. I feel like they're different enough. I think there's definitely certain things about Curios that are way more satisfying. Like, for example, if you can just know that you're picking up like the best, the highest scored gems in Curios, like it's a great feeling. With this one, I feel like there are different elements that give you that satisfaction. I feel like, it's quick, it's super easy to learn. I feel like this is a game that I could teach to my family or my friends with no issues. You guys know me. It's probably no surprise. I don't teach a lot of games. It's not the thing that I'm like, feel like I'm very good at, but I feel like I could teach this game to my friends and that we would have a good time with it. It's quick. It's not a super big investment. For a lot of people, that is kind of a barrier. A lot of the people that I try to introduce games to, if it takes longer than 5 minutes to learn, like, I can't even get them to play the game with me.
Right.
I've been trying to teach my family, like, teach you for a long time. And they just glaze over after the first 10 minutes of explanation. So when I find games like this, it kind of excites me. It makes me feel like I could grab it and plan to bring it to a holiday or something like that. And actually get it played.
Grandparents love it.
Yeah. So it's a 4 for me.
Awesome. All right. So there are thoughts on Wildlife Safari. If anything we've said has piqued your interest and you're interested in checking Wildlife Safari out, I have good news. This game is very available. So as I mentioned earlier, this game is produced most recently by Eagle Gryphon Games, and this game is available directly from them off their website. And I'd encourage you to go check it out. So Eagle Gryphon Games, I don't know, I guess they just create a lot of backstock and supply of their games, but almost all their titles, even dating back to the early 2000s, are available. So you can get it there easily on BGG as well, but just get it from Eagle Gryphon. And they have very good prices. A lot of their stuff, especially the older stock, is often discounted as well. So you can pick it up there.
Great. Well, those are our thoughts on Wildlife Safari.
All right.
Money makes the world go round. But what makes the money go round? You do, in this quick and clever game of international currency collection. Strategy matters most as players try to outmaneuver each other to create a winning portfolio. In each round, players bid to maximize the value of their portfolios through the exchange and acquisition of international currencies. No matter how well planned your strategy, be prepared for the unexpected. At every turn, another player's bid might upset the market and challenge your chance to win. If you enjoy outwitting your opponents and think you can outsmart the market, then money is for you.
Best one yet.
That's my favorite one for sure. It's like 40s radio announcer. Yeah. That was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about Money.
Money.
Published in 1999 by Eagle Gryphon Games.
Old one.
So by Reiner Knizia, of course. Currently ranked on BGG 1,869. So Money is a game of set collection. It uses a deck of 69 cards with various currencies on them. 7 different currencies to be exact. And each of these currencies is made up of 9 cards of different denominations. So 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Each currency has 3 20s and 3 30s, which is important to note as we move on to talking about how the game scores. So that's what I'm going to talk about first. So if a player, throughout the course of the game, manages to collect cards of a particular currency that total 200 or more in value, that player is going to score the full amount of all of those cards added together. If the player collects between 100 and 200 of a particular currency, they're going to score that total value minus 100.
Right.
If the player collects less than 100, counts for nothing. But with one exception. And that exception is, I mentioned that there are 3 20s and there are 3 30s. If a player manages to collect all 3 of the 20s or all 3 of the 30s, they get a 100-point bonus. You'll notice that there's 7 currencies with 9 cards. That's 63 cards. But I said the deck had 69. So there are 6 other cards in the deck. These are coin cards that are just always worth 10.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another strategy that you can take, is trying to get lots of those cards. Now that I've explained scoring, let's talk about how you actually play the game.
Right.
So there's one common deck of all of these cards in the center. Each player is going to start with a certain number of cards. And then 2 piles of 4 cards each will be dealt out onto the table face up. After that, each player is going to choose any number of cards from their hand and play them face down to the table as a bid for the cards that are available on the table. Once everybody's done that, we'll flip the cards over, and based on who bid the most, players will have the opportunity to choose to exchange the cards that they've bid with either of the 2 piles that are on the table, or with the cards that any other player at the table has bid. Once we've gone all the way around the table and every player's had the opportunity to do that, new cards get dealt out to replace the ones that were taken, and you continue on until the deck runs out. At that point, every player looks at what they have in their hand, scores according to what I talked about earlier. That's the game.
Nice.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So, Cameron, why don't you tell us what your thoughts were?
Yeah, I definitely felt like this game was pretty easy to learn, pretty easy to teach. I appreciate that it was short. It's definitely interesting, I guess, the fact that you're actually competing over all the cards that get laid down, all the separate piles of cards, but there are only a couple that are visible. So
right.
And maybe not everyone plays this way, but I had the feeling when I was playing this game that everyone's kind of like choosing one of these piles that they want and then angling to get one of those. I think the other strategy that you take is you just kind of like throw down some cards because you don't want really any of the piles that are out there, and just hope that cards that you actually want come up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I enjoyed, you were kind of touching on the start of the game, and there is some fun in looking at your starting hand and trying to figure out, what road am I going to go down here?
Yeah.
And you kind of feel some urgency. If you've played the game once, the second time you play it, because you got to get off to a good start.
Yeah.
All right. So you're kind of looking at your hand and you're like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this work? Because there are a lot of cards in this game. And like Jason said, there's 7 different currencies. So you're really kind of just, it can be tough to figure out, what am I going to give up? What am I going to go for? And how much I'm going to bid on my first turn, and making a plan from the start. That doesn't mean that's bad. It's just, it's difficult, right? It's a good decision.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting decision as well that comes down to, do I try to just hone in on one particular currency, or do I try to spread out and potentially get some of those 20 or 30 bonuses? I was able to try different strategies in different games, and I enjoy when there are multiple paths to victory, potentially. And so I enjoyed that aspect as well.
Yep. Yeah, another thing I liked as a good decision is, when I first time I played this, I was like, well, I'm just going to bid high every time, and just make sure I get what I want, right? But that doesn't always work out, because if you bid super high, you're giving that bid to one of your opponents, right? So remember, everything you put down and bid with, somebody's going to take it. So if I bid like 140, I just gave somebody a ton of money, right? I might got what I wanted, but I just gave my opponent something good too. And I've really hampered myself for a future auction, right? Because remember, a lot of those cards that you left in your hand can't give up, right? Because you're trying to collect them as sets. So if you just spend everything on your next auction, you're not going to have like hardly anything to bid with.
You don't have anything to throw away.
Right.
So restating in what you said, the thing it is that you feel like is a pro in this case?
That you have to make a choice between bidding smaller or bidding larger. I can't just put the big bid down every time, because it's not always the best move.
Yeah.
Because I found I lost a game like that because I was just loading everybody up with good cards.
Yeah. So I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, this might be a good time to switch over to cons.
Okay.
Because for me, when I think about that like element, the thing that comes to mind is like, in some ways, this game is a little bit like, we talked about auctions in the last episode, kind of like the blind auction, right? I'm trying to figure out what's essentially the smallest amount that I can play to the table in order to get what I actually want. And I found throughout multiple plays of this game that probably too frequently I was overpaying in order to get what I want, and ended up in that situation of I didn't pick up enough cruft that I was like totally fine parting with. I also found that it was really difficult to track, like, because people are picking up groups of cards, it's hard to track, like, oh, I think Chris is going for this color. I think Jason's going for this color. And therefore know either to try to pick them up as a defensive move so Jason doesn't get all of them, or, to pick up the ones that I actually need for my points.
Yeah. I agree with you. That was my biggest con. And again, I'm reluctant to say this because some people might not see this as a con, but unless, another game group shout out, unless you're Justin Vidovich, who's in our group, and you can just remember every single card in the deck and where it's gone and who's holding it, you're going to have a hard time. I am of the opinion it's difficult, if not impossible, to keep track of everything because there's so much currency flying around. Yep. There's so many different kinds and so many values. I just can't keep up with it. And I don't know if it's possible, to be honest. Like, who has this? Who has this? Who's going for this? Where did that 20 go? Where's that 30? Like, that's hard.
And another thing that adds to that, and I mentioned this because it was actually enough of an influence on my rating decision that I felt like I had to mention it. That is the components for this game. The designs of the different currencies, I feel personally, are very difficult to tell apart. And the card backs, the design that they chose to put on the back of the card, makes it almost impossible to tell when someone places a hand of cards down on the table to tell how many cards are in that hand. One thing that I failed to mention in the rules is that every player is also given a bluff card. So basically just a blank card that you can add to your bid to buff it up, to make
it look stronger than it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if I can't tell how many cards you've played in the first place, then it doesn't really matter if you add a bluff or not.
Everyone puts down a blob of cards.
Honestly, I can't see a situation where you would ever not play your bluff card.
I totally agree.
And so it kind of made that card to me seem kind of irrelevant to the gameplay.
I didn't find it to be useful. I never found that I looked at people's piles and like, oh, Cameron has 4 cards instead of 3. I should put another one. I always just knew what I was going to bid.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like the bluff card did anything.
Yeah. I feel like it would have been an interesting exercise maybe to try and play the game with no bluff cards in it, just to see if it was like, oh, we missed that. But I think our assessment of it is we probably wouldn't miss it.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, Jason, do you want to give us your final thoughts?
Yeah, so I struggled with my final thoughts for this game. I did enjoy playing it the few times that I did. I do think that over time, the replayability of this game seems somewhat limited to me. I feel as if because of the way the currencies are structured and everyone basically at some point settles in on 1 or 2 currencies that they're really going after, and because of the way cards constantly shuffle around the table and every card is going to end up with someone, right? It seems like the game eventually just arrives at an equilibrium where everyone has chosen their currency or 2 currencies, and they're eventually probably going to get most of the cards from that currency. Maybe not. They might not get all of them, right? But because of the way the bidding works, unless I'm deliberately holding back cards to prevent other people from getting them, which is probably part of the strategy, but it comes at a cost of me probably not being able to get what I actually need to score, then eventually the game just equalizes and everybody has their things. And then it just comes down to like that nuanced difference of who managed to get more bonuses than the other folks at the table. So I did enjoy my plays, but because I think it would probably grow stale over time, I gave this one a 3.
Yeah, so for me, this game was saved from being a 2 because it's short and simple. It's a solid filler, that's about it. But honestly, even at that, if we had time to drop a filler in, I wouldn't be like chomping at the bit to play money. I give it a 3. I wouldn't pout if someone wanted to play it. If someone hadn't played it before, right? I mean, why wouldn't we want to show someone a game that we thought enough about to feature on the podcast? But I wouldn't be sad if we skipped it out.
Okay. So I was like Jason on this one. This one was a hard one for me. And mostly because this one fell on that sell line for me. So I was between 4 and 3 on this one. I had plays of this one I enjoyed, but I think I enjoyed them because I won.
Always helps.
It helps, right? But then I had plays of this game that I didn't like because I lost. And then I just kept realizing more and more that, you talked about control in the last review, Jason, with Wildlife Safari. I didn't feel like I had control here. With the way that the currencies are flying around, and there's just no guarantee that the cards that you want are ever going to come.
Yep.
Or sometimes, like, I might need the 20s, and somebody lays the 20 down and somebody lays the other one. Well, I can't get them both.
Yeah.
And now what do I do, right? It just goes into the ether again. I guess what I'm saying is the game frustrated me more than I enjoyed it most of the time. And so for that reason, it gets a 3 for me as well. I don't think it's bad. It's just meh.
Yeah.
I didn't love it, so it's going on the sell pile.
Yeah, it's not broken. Did you guys feel like you had to read other people's minds?
No, I just felt like I was just, please, Lord, just play the card I need. And I can't remember who has it. I mean, I can remember a couple, but just it's too all over the place for me.
Unless you like counting cards, maybe money is not for you.
If you're really good at it and you like it, maybe you like this, but meh.
Well, at least we're consistent.
That's right. This is our first one where we synced up, right? I think
it might be.
I think so, yeah.
3-3-3. So
that's our thoughts on money. Chris, where can we get it?
Yeah. So after all this complaining, if you think you might like money, which you might, this one is also...
Who doesn't like money?
Who doesn't love money, right? This one is also available directly from Eagle Griffin Games on their website. It's in stock right now. So like I said, if you're interested, I would just direct you to their website. You can get it there.
Supporting those publishers.
That's right. They deserve it. It's good publishers.
Immerse yourself in the colorful world of fortune tellers and snake dancers. Visit a time when traveling circuses of men, women, and beasts were able to enchant entire villages by means of feats, songs, and stories. You will determine the paths on which 4 traveling shows journey through an entire kingdom. On their travels, the entertainers are acknowledged with much applause, but may also get some jeers for poor performances. You will determine which shows are worthy of your financial support, but be careful of which entertainers you sponsor. Only those with successful shows can help fill your coffers. Whoever turns out to be the most prudent patron by amassing the greatest wealth wins the game. Spectaculum!
Yes!
That was so much flavor text for such a simple game.
Oh, man.
No kidding. Yeah.
This is my favorite part of doing this podcast.
I love it, man.
It is a lot of fun.
Spectaculum, published in 2012, most recently by R&R Games. At the time of this recording, rated 4,020 on BGG.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 4,020. Just to review, the other 2 games that we just reviewed were both inside the top 2,000. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe
so surprising.
I don't know if we're giving anything away here. But yeah, it's 4,000.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this game I picked up on a whim early in my board game hobby. And I will tell you what got me was the cover art.
Really?
Which is funny because this is the most pasted on theme ever.
Yeah.
Which is just common for Knizia. I didn't know any better, right?
Yeah,
so when I first got into the hobby, Knizia was one of the few designers I actually knew. And I remember going through the shelves at the game store, and I was like, dude, this cover is cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's got this really stylized artwork of these circus performers, having no clue that this game is basically a stock market game.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'll talk about the rules in a minute. But it was Knizia, and it appealed to me the way that it looked. So I was like, I'm getting this. All right. So that's how I acquired it. So rules. I think it's important, even though the theme is pasted on, to kind of reinforce the rules with the theme a little bit. I think it helps. So what you've got is you are investing in different circus troops. Okay. So there are 4 circus troops of 4 different colors. And those troops are represented by a number of cards. I think each troop has like 11 cards in it. Something like that. So you will be purchasing performers in that troop, in that color, and you're basically investing in them. And then over the course of the game, as the performers move throughout the kingdom, you're hoping that those that those troops that you're investing highly in perform well, while the ones that you're don't have ownership in, you're trying to run them into the ground by the way you direct them into the kingdom, okay?
Which will happen.
Which will happen, all right? So this is a buy low, sell high stock market game. Don't be deceived, all right? But it's got an interesting theme on it, the circus theme. So the way the game plays is on your turn, you have 2 optional actions. You can buy and or sell cards from the 4 troops however you want. So you can buy 2 from the same troop. You can do different troops. You can buy one and sell one. You have complete liberty there to do however you want. That's optional. You don't have to do that. Okay? The price of those cards is whatever the value of the troop is at that time. So at the start of the game, every troop, every stock, okay, is worth 5. And that value will fluctuate over the course of the game. Okay, so that's how much you'll have to pay if you buy into them. If you sell them, that's how much money you'll get, however much they're worth at the time. Your mandatory action is very simple. You'll reach into a cloth bag and you'll pull out 3 wooden discs, the colors which match the 4 different troops. And you will place those discs down into the kingdom, directing that troop through the kingdom. Now, it's important to understand, I didn't mention this, but when you set up the game, the board is absolutely littered with all of these cardboard chits that have values on them. +1, +2, -2, -3, okay? There are also empty spaces. If you lead that troop onto one of those spots, that is what increases the value of the troop or decreases it. So if the value is at 5 and I drive it onto a -3, that circus troop's value drops to 2. What that is supposed to represent is they had a bad performance. Like the juggler, like a ball slipped out of his hand and hit a kid in the head or something. And like, they got booed, right? So you'll lay those wooden discs out and then that's the end of your turn. One other quick thing I think it's important to note, the optional action, you can do those before and or after your mandatory action, so you have some flexibility there.
You can split it, right? One before, lay your tokens, one after if you prefer.
And that's very important from a strategic standpoint. There are also a couple of types of tokens out on the board. The money tokens, where if you hit those, you'll get 2 coins for every card you have of that particular troop. And then there's the medicine bottle, where if you hit that, that means they got sick, and so you'll have to pay 2 coins for every card you own of that. The game will end once somebody hits the center hex, which is the kingdom. That's a +5 hex. And every red token is covered. Every special token is covered except for 1. Once that happens, the players will add up their cash on hand plus the value of their stock certificates. And highest value wins the game. So, Cameron, how did you feel about Spectaculum?
Yeah, so once again, I'm finding this is actually where Knizia shines. This game is very simple rules-wise.
Yep.
Your turn is simple, but it's a challenging game to win. I like that much like an actual economy game with stocks, you can directly impact the value of those stocks. I actually also really enjoyed being able to determine what order you take your actions in. You can do this thing where you can basically tank the stock before.
Mm-hmm. Get it cheap.
Yeah, basically get it cheap and then do bye-bye of that one that you just got and get them for really cheap. Or you could basically buy it, jump on the spaces that bump the stock's value.
Yep.
And then if you want, the same turn, sell it immediately.
Sell it, just make money.
Yeah.
And then you're driving the price up on everybody else, right? Yeah.
Yes. It makes increase the barrier of entry for other players.
For sure.
Yeah, what I found fascinating about this game is, and I don't know if this was a play off of the title of the game or not, but this is really a game of speculation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The way that the board is laid out, because it's completely random every game, where those pluses and minuses are going to be, where the red plus and minus tokens are going to be. Looking at the board at the beginning of the game, every troop starts in a particular location, right? So you can see what is available within the proximity to that particular troop. Like what can potentially happen to that troop?
Yes.
What their fate is going to be in their performances as they go throughout the kingdom, I guess. And so really what you're trying to do is at every moment evaluate what could potentially happen to this. If somebody else has the chips, I might not have the chips for it, but if somebody else does, what's going to happen to the price?
What are they going to do to me?
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly evaluating what are the threats and what are the potential gains for any of the given troops, and then trying to mitigate your ability to get punished by somebody, hitting a really bad spot, and maximize your ability to gain from when other people really make it increase. And I think that's a fascinating aspect of this game.
Yeah. You said this, Cameron, and I agree with you. Knizia is a master at incredibly simple rules. I mean, literally, you can teach this game in 5 to 10 minutes. However, I've played this game several times. I've never played this game where people are just taking their turns, boom, 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 boom. It just does not happen. People lock up on this game.
Yep.
I mean, big time.
Paralysis.
Yes. For such a simple game, right? I've played this game where everybody just gets super quiet, who's not talking. Yeah. And that's because there's danger everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to see where you can make profits, but the board is just littered with danger. Yeah. And if you don't respect it, you will get punished. And so because of that, you're just thinking really hard. And I love that. Easy rules, great decisions.
Yeah, and I think you get that aspect of, much like holding stocks in real life, it's like, have we hit the top of the bull run?
Yeah. Do I need to sell?
Yeah. Is it time to sell?
Right.
Particularly because, in this game, what you really don't want to happen isn't even so much like, is the value of my stocks going to dip? Although that's a concern, because you can read the board and go, could it potentially recover or not?
Right.
But man, getting hit with those the medicine things, if you're holding 4 or something like that, and you have to drop 8 money in the middle of the game because someone hit one of those when you got a handful of that color, man, it hurts.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. You said holding 4. So if you are speculating on a stock and it looks pretty good and you really get in on it and your opponents are not in on it, they are incentivized to destroy you.
Yeah, you were right.
Exactly.
So there was a game we were playing where David Yerger and we were investing in purple because there was pluses all around purple. Yeah. And we thought we were being really clever. We both had like 4 shares in purple. Well, Emmanuel, who also is in our group, didn't have any. And he got a little lucky with the bag pull, but this was a good lesson. He drew 3 purples.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And he drove us into 2 of the medicine bottles and obliterated us.
Just wrecked you.
I mean, we had to sell our stocks off. I mean, we couldn't recover.
And that's a good point to make, because I think we may have not covered it in the rules. If you can't cover with cash,
you have to sell your stock.
You have to sell off your stock
at half their value.
Oh,
I mean, it was over at that point. And that was because we played bad. Yeah. Like, we piled up on it so heavily that it incentivized him to go after us, and he did. And he won the game. Yeah. Because he just punished us in that way.
Yeah, so another pro, I feel like we talk about randomness usually being considered a con. A lot of people don't like it. But for Spectaculum, I actually feel like the randomness is important to the game.
Yeah, you're speculating,
You're speculating, right? Markets are meant to be unpredictable. Yes. And if you could just sort of choose directly what 3 shows you wanted to influence each turn, this would be a much less interesting game.
Totally agree.
The fact that every turn you're handed 3 different things and you have to go, what am I going to do with these? I didn't choose to have to go down this path, but I have to do something. Am I going to maybe offload something that I'm holding and invest in these? Or am I going to pick on the people that I'm playing with and maybe drive the price of stuff that they're holding down?
Yeah, do that. It's more fun.
And depending on the layout of the game, you can choose those paths. So the randomness actually contributes to some tactical decision making.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to cons. Jason, anything you didn't like?
I struggled with coming up with things that I didn't like for this game. It's so simple, and there are so few rules that really there weren't many. I think the only luck that exists in this game is what you draw out of that bag. And we even played a variant, which I think is an official variant.
It is
right?
Official variant, yeah.
That allows you to draw more than 3 and choose 3 out of however many you draw.
4, yeah.
Right? And that even helps to mitigate the very little luck that there is in this game. Yeah, for me, I really struggled to come up with cons, honestly. I don't know that I have one.
I don't think the theme's very great. We talked about it being pasted on, but I feel like it could have been other things. I think I struggled with the
fact.
Like
what? Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on this.
Yeah, you're saying like, what would I replace it with?
Yeah, so a stock market theme, obviously, but
boring,
right?
Yeah,
there are a million of those.
I think the thing that I struggled with
a unique theme, right?
Yeah, I think the thing that I struggled with more than the circus show thing is that I don't know, something about acquiring these cards and like they have the different, the goofy little descriptions and art and stuff like that. Yeah. And like they're fun to look at.
Sure.
I think for some reason, when you have different cards, I want them to be have an action associated with them or a boon for say maybe instead of it just being here's a pile of blue cards that you can choose from, it being here's 3 different ones or 2 different ones that you can choose from, and they have a different special attribute or something, and maybe that I would have a reason to pick.
So you're vying to introduce complexity into the game, because that would.
Yeah, it would. I think. Maybe it's not that I desire more complexity, because I don't think mechanically the game needs it. I just think that for some reason I want the cards to have some different features. Right? That's just something that I like when there's a mechanic associated with the whatever the fuzzy unicorn or whatever the things are on the cards.
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, it's pasted on theme. I don't love the phrase pasted on theme. I mean, I understand why it's used and I understand what you're saying, but again, I'm going to give Knizia credit here for trying to be unique, right?
Yeah.
He could have just easily named this
land stock
market speculation, and make it like
money,
or speculation over here in my shelf, which is a queen game. It's a speculating game. It's literally called speculation. That's lame.
Yeah, I'll concede that.
At least when I put the little disc on the -3, I'm like, oh, bad performance. The +3,
someone
I'm
broke a leg.
The bear was bouncing on the ball and he did a good job. I can appreciate the attempt at a neat theme.
I think I agree with Chris here. I enjoyed the theme on this one.
Could have been worse for sure.
Yeah. All right. I think I can concede that, right? It could have just been sort of this is a straightforward speculation mechanic.
Right. Because it's a stock
economic game.
Yeah.
Right. Which you're right, it's boring.
Yeah, would be very boring.
So let's move on to final thoughts.
Let's do it.
All right, so I got to play this game 3 times in preparation for this discussion, and honestly, I would happily play it 3 more times. This game is really interesting, and I feel like it has high replay value. It's unpredictable. You don't just do the same thing every time, right? Which is actually a thing that I would consider a con in any game that I saw it in. If you step up to a game, and we've talked about this, about games like Scythe, where it's if you're playing yellow, you got a XYZ in your first 2 turns. I'm I hate stuff like that. I like the fact that this was unpredictable. So sure, sometimes the randomly placed tokens can sort of lead to an obvious course for the game, but regardless, since that's public knowledge, the contest of the game is who can exploit that path for the greatest profit, who pivots at the right time to make, to the next big show, who gets out before a show gets tanked for the rest of the game. There are just so many good decisions to make. I think replay value is high, so I give this game a 5. Woo-hoo. Happily. I think this is an excellent game.
Nice. All right. For me, Spectaculum is spectacular.
Ooh.
I'm just going to come out and say it right now. I also give this game a 5. I think it's amazing. Sir. I think it's a travesty that this game is rated 4,020 on BGG. What the heck?
That is unreal.
Yeah. The only way I can rationalize that is just enough people haven't played it. Now, I'm sure that there are some people maybe listening to this podcast who have been in the hobby a while, have played this. This game is straightforward rules-wise, okay? And so I'm going to try not to go on too long here, but I want to make one soapbox statement. I think it's worthwhile. I'm going to do it, okay?
Go for it.
All right. I've noticed since I've been in the hobby that there's a trend in gaming that I wouldn't say it's disturbing, but it does bother me a little bit, that there's this feeling within board game circles, especially more quote-unquote serious board gamers, that games just have to have more and more complexity, right? Oh, that game is too simple, or, oh, I need more tracks, and I need more grids, and I need more cubes to move around, and I have to have a choice of 15 different actions, and that's okay. I don't mind games like that. I enjoy games like that. That doesn't mean games like this can't be enjoyed. Maybe that's why it's rated so low, because, this game is a one-trick pony, right? You're buying and selling stock. That's it.
Yeah.
It's simple in that way. But like I said, I've never played this game where people weren't just locked up around the table.
Scratching heads.
Yeah. It's got great decisions, right? So for me, it's a 5. Not every game has to be super complicated to be good. That's soapbox over.
And
right?
really,
I feel the need to defend this score because it could get eviscerated online. But
yeah,
I think it's great.
But I really think it speaks to the elegance of a game. As a fellow 5 raider,
that's right.
It speaks to the elegance of a game. If you can have a simple set of rules, but a bit of like some agonizing decisions.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it the right time to fill in the blank? I think it's a great point.
All right. Okay, Jason, no pressure.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot that I can add that hasn't already been said. Honestly, I've really enjoyed all of my plays of this game. And for me, get ready for it. It was a spectacular spectacle of speculation. I debated between a 5 and a 6 on this game.
Wow.
I did too, honestly.
I'm still kind of debating in my mind as I speak right now. I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay.
But if being on the fence was a valid opinion, I would be on the fence between 5 and 6 on this one, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're 18xx game players, okay? We play heavy games. We enjoy those games.
Absolutely.
This is a great game.
Yeah.
You know, it still scratches a great itch for us.
Yeah, it's really refreshing, I think, to come from playing some of those games, from playing, Terraforming Mars. We were playing Terraforming Mars like a lot
Oh, yeah.
recently.
Love
And
it.
I know we've mentioned Terraforming Mars in several episodes at this point. As a game that we love and as a obviously popular game. But games like this, they're refreshing to come into.
I agree.
When it's like, let's sit down. Oh, we brought a new person though, right? You don't have the awkward conversation of like, oh, but like so-and-so's coming, right?
Yep.
They've never played before. So we're having to spend an hour learning this game. It's like, nope, we're going to play Spectaculum.
For sure. Yeah.
They'll be up to speed in 8 minutes or less.
That example I gave where Emmanuel ran us into all that trouble, that was his first hobby board game ever.
Yeah.
We taught him Spectaculum. He had never played Catan. He had never played Ticket to Ride, and he won the game. And he delighted in punishing us in that way. And he understood it. And he was like, how do I get this game? As soon as we had played it. And I enjoyed it. It's fun.
Well, how do we get this game?
Yeah, so it's an older game. It's limited availability online, but you can get it in the BGG marketplace as usual. Most of the time you can. 20 BGG listings, 7 on eBay for pretty reasonable prices. Maybe it'll be reprinted one day. This game doesn't get much traction, unfortunately, but I think it's a good one.
They reprint it. I hope they use my slogan.
With a spectacular speculation of...
Spectacular spectacle of speculation.
Spectacle of speculation, yeah. Perfect. All right, and that's our thoughts on Spectaculum.
So that's our take on some of the lesser-known games by the great Reiner Knizia. As always, if any of these games sound like they're up your alley, we would encourage you to check them out. We encourage you guys to engage with us online. And remember that a good review on your favorite podcast platform can go a long way towards helping us out.
Yeah.
Get the word out on this podcast and on these hidden gem games, which is what we're all about. For now, I'm your host, Jason.
Chris?
And I'm Cameron. Thanks for listening. This episode of Hidden Gems, number 3, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on February 20, 2021. Join us in 2 weeks when we talk about a trio of games from an immensely underappreciated publisher, Yastari Games. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Katelyn Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Katelyn Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something burning you want to say about one of the games that we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems. And until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search. Those are our thoughts on Wildlife Safari.
All right.
I almost said Streets of Savannah.
I almost did it too. I almost did the same thing. I think earlier I was like, and that's what I really like about this game.
Yeah.
So I was wanting to say Streets of Savannah. I was like, that's not right.
Yeah, that's right. All right.